Where'd he go? I came back with the milk.
You can run, but are you fast enough? You can hide, but I will find you. Close your eyes if you don't doze off. Hold your breath so I don't hear you. A trail of tears that you will leave me. Maybe be straight to those who fear me. You can run if I don't catch you. But nightmare time is gonna get you.
Well. After finishing the hour-plus review of Hatchetfield trilogy, I thought it would disappear into the YouTube ether, but lo and behold, the response to that video was astounding. Like, I'm talking sextupling, yes, that's the actual term, the size of the channel. I had no plans to review Nightmare Time or to even give it a second thought as a series, but you all got in the comments and convinced me otherwise. And I found out not only why I should watch the Nightmare Time series, but why you should too. So, where to start? Well, I guess it would be down to my preference. And there's no other character that I'd want to watch more of after watching the musicals than one Linda Monroe. That's right, I started with Honeyqueen, and I believe everyone getting into watching Nightmare Time should too. As every episode usually consists of two stories, one which is some referential classic scary story, and a story about the Lords in Black, or the Black and White. Like how Ape-Man being a Sasquatch story, and Watcherworld exploring the Lord in Black Blinky, and later, Nightmare Time stories actually continue off each other, such as Forever and Always and Time Bastard. But with Honeyqueen, just a good old one-off story of around 90 minutes on its own about Linda Monroe, everyone's favorite person to hate from Black Friday. We're introduced to her family consisting of her 4 beautiful blonde boys, including her favorite youngest son, River. We also meet her husband Gerald and her grandfather, who nobody likes except for their spoilt children because rich grandparent and all that.
Do you have any money for us?
Money!
No. Of course.
Roman removes a wad of hundreds from his pocket and starts doling them out as Linda and Gerald enter, shaking their heads.
We find out about the beauty pageant competition of Hatchetfield, where the winner shall be crowned Honeyqueen, and it seems that Linda's father cares more about the Honeyqueen than her own daughter. So what if she became the Honeyqueen? And with our sympathetic backstory in place, and character motivation ready to go, we find ourselves rooting for Linda Monroe of all people in this story. However, every good lead needs a foil, so here comes Zoe, one of the workers from Beanies who is having an affair with Sam. Look, if you know him, you know him. If you've watched the 3 musicals that have been released, then you'll know enough about each of these characters to at least be like, oh yeah, it's that person. The episode becomes a very Ballad of Sarah Berry type thing, where these 2 competitors try to literally eliminate the competition in a long string of sabotage and blackmail.
From her bag, Linda removes the folder of incriminating photos. She tosses it to Zoe.
Take a look at this. Oh, go ahead, keep it. I have plenty of copies. Your Mima? That's what you call your grandmother, right? I wonder what she would think if she found out about your behavior.
Zoe, she's trying to blackmail you. She can't do that if you take away her leverage. That is a lot of medications. It'd be a shame if things got a little mixed up.
Eventually, the night of the pageant arrives and fevers reach a pitch as Linda's favorite child River gets kidnapped by Zoe's boyfriend Sam, who is a cop, in an attempt to get Linda to finally drop out. Zoe, being so desperate to get out of Hatchetfield and kickstart her career as an actress, and those who become honeyqueen are known for leaving Hatchetfield to move on to bigger and brighter things. So at this point, I'm not actually sure which bitch to root for to win honeyqueen. But you know who I am rooting for? Motherfucking Gerald! This greatest husband of all time who gets out to the parking lot to go fight an armed cop to get his son back. I've never seen a more impressive display, as not only is there one, but two fights being immaculately performed over a Zoom call. The fights end with Zoe being hanged from the theater roof, Sam being crushed by a car.
He fires his gun. The SUV's windshield shatters. The car plows into Sam and crashes into the side of a beige sedan. Crushed. Sam is crushed.
And tragically, Gerald bleeds out from a gunshot wound just to keep his son safe. Linda Monroe is crowned honeyqueen and tries to call Gerald to let him know the news, and for the first time in a long time, lets him know that she loves him. Except Gerald is dead, and the voicemail isn't going to be delivered to anyone. So Linda's father, one of the judges of the pageant, lets Linda know that all the mess shall be cleared up and there are more important matters to attend to. He takes her to his car and begins driving to an unknown destination, out in the woods, to a sacrificial ritual site with piles of dead pigs. Linda's father explains that the reason that the women crowned as honeyqueen are said to have moved out of Hatchetfield is because they are in reality brought here. A lord in black known as Niblanithim requires a sacrifice to feed on, and who better than the honeyqueen, the sweetest woman in Hatchetfield. The episode ends with Linda being viciously devoured by the summoned monster, as her father shows no remorse and no respect. What a chilling ending. Or at least it would be, except for a Fwendy Wendy exposition song all about Nibbly and his name. Yum yum. I get they wanted to leave it on a higher note than what extreme tragedy that story was, but man, I like how emotionally invested I was in a Linda Monroe story of all things. So it's clear to see that with Zoom format they are given limitations, but after their first Nightmare Time episode, like everyone else in the pandemic, they took those restrictions and turned them into advantages, taking the opportunity to make music videos in place of musical numbers on stage, and having the cameras only show the characters that are supposed to be on stage, rather than, in the first Nightmare Time episode, where it seems all people in the Zoom call were visible at all times. The fight scene especially being a highlight of this episode, as well as the costumes, which, while people say Nightmare Time is best enjoyed as a podcast, are things that I think heavily contribute to the storytelling of each Nightmare Time episode. Not to mention what Matt DeHaan does. Improvising with the leitmotifs. I miss Sideways. Please come back. Anyways, as he improvises through every episode with the leitmotifs that had been given to him by Jeff Blim from previous shows, Matt plays the cup of roasted coffee and I'm a cop themes during the fight scene to make such an epic scene. Again, all over a Zoom call.
Windows keep River safe inside, but Gerald is hit. He grabs his shoulder and scurries off. Sam scrambles after him. Backstage, Linda's beneath a workbench. When it flips over, tools and paintbrushes scatter across the floor. Zoe stands there with a fire extinguisher raised above her head. She brings it crashing down. Linda dives from its path. Zoe's phone, however, is lying right there. Smash! Zoe lifts the fire extinguisher, realizing what she's done. She looks down at the shattered remains of her most prized possession. Her veins bulge. Her blood bubbles, thinking of all the things she never got to back up on there.
My pictures!
Bravo, Starkid. Very cool. Also, the new songs in Nightmare Time are of course on par with the stage musicals. Honeyqueen still goes around in my head regularly. So now you're hooked, and so am I, on my introductory episode of Honeyqueen. So now it's time to go back to the beginning of the series and start reviewing Nightmare Time from start to finish. As with many people who, in my opinion, would be mistaken to start Nightmare Time at episode 1, it would unfortunately be met with an episode where Starkid is still trying to find its feet with how exactly they would make use of the video call medium to perform an equivalent to a live stage performance. Unfortunately, live streaming and Zoom calling caused the very beginning of the video to lag and does not give a good first impression as to what this medium would be capable of. And is probably why many people, including myself, gave Nightmare Time a miss when it first came out. While trying to avoid spoilers from the comments, the general consensus I found surrounding Ape-Man is to completely forget about his existence, which I mean, it's alright, but not worth sweeping under the rug completely, especially since it has my two favourite characters, Professor Higgins and Ted, just fucking about for an hour trying to scam a fortune that's already been spent in search of the Ape-Man. It's cliche, it's light and fluffy watching / listening if you're using the podcast, but in the end, it kinda falls flat. Then you've got Watcher World, where we take the most emotionally charged storyline from the guy who doesn't like musicals and run with it all the way to the end. Bill takes his daughter Alice out for a day in a Disneyland knockoff called Watcher World, while Alice would rather go to a party with her girlfriend Deb, but Bill insists that they actually spend some time together. Family shenanigans and emotions ensue as they have some bonding and breakup time on each ride and watching a show starring the Sniggles. Remember? From Black Friday? Where one Sniggle called Sniglet, which, let's be honest, we are really riding a fine line on that one, sings a song about wanting to leave town, but then is scolded by her fellow friendy wens, showing that things aren't as they seem, and in a humorous moment, the actors refer to each other by their real names to truly smash that fourth wall apart.
Angela, are you alright? Ruby, call the medic!
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to...
Shut up,
I swear.
Jeff! You're drunk again, aren't you?
No, I'm stone cold sober. Whoa!
Eventually, things begin to shape and shift, and taking advantage of the tension between the father and daughter, Blinky, the mascot of Watcher World, who's also revealed to be a lord in black, turns the two against each other, with Alice wielding a rifle from an arcade shooter and Bill swinging a mallet from a strength test game. The two meet where all climactic theme park fight scenes do, in the Hall of Mirrors. The two eventually settle their differences and confess they just want to spend more time with each other, and Alice fires a rifle, hitting Blinky right into his singular eye, causing goo to flood the Hall of Mirrors and washing Bill and Alice out into the car park, where they get into the car and Alice finally lets Bill into her life by adding him on Instagram. But her phone was previously shown to have fallen off a roller coaster and been broken. Perhaps all is not as it seems. Ooh, dun dun dun. So the limitations of the Zoom form aside, I would like to talk about what the Nightmare Time series introduces us to. First and foremost, the Nightmare Time theme slaps heavy, and is shot in a way that prepares you for the split screen aspect, yet still allowing for the actors to interact with each other. If you use the suspension and disbelief and enjoy the show, you doofus. As well as that animation that kicks in when the music switches up. So damn good. We are also introduced to the format of having exposition songs about each episode's antagonist with the Hatchetfield Ape-Man and Blinky song, as well as an additional song that is performed in the middle of one of the stories. In this case, being Sniglet's I Want song. The cast also makes good use of changing the Zoom backgrounds, most notably Richard Mannion, who is a representation of a gothic manor that Professor Higgins was said to live in. Joey Richter shows an enclosure that the Ape-Man was meant to be kept in, and in Watcher World, James Tolbert uses a theme park background as appropriate to the setting of the story. So I sent out a poll not too long ago asking people's opinions on where the best place to start Nightmare Time was. It was a close one, but this next episode is the one that came out on top as an overall fan favorite. These two stories are fan favorites for a very good reason. This is the best time travel story I've ever seen, and I've watched Back to the Future countless times. I'm a sucker for time travel stories where the problems that the time traveler is trying to resolve are actually the consequences of him going back in time in the first place. That's what we like to call a little foreshadowing. Another thing to keep in mind with these two stories is that they are both happening simultaneously. First of all, the songs that open each stories are absolutely amazing. Forever and Always is such a light and fluffy song, but then you've got the James Bond song itself, Time Bastard, which is an absolute delight to listen to, especially the way it's shot so cinematically, only to show a poorly cropped screenshot of Joey Richter trying to take a dump. It is my favorite from the whole series, and I can really see why the majority of people think so too. Then of course you've got the Peanuts song, which is alright too, I guess. Forever and Always opens with a homeless guy, the homeless guy, interrupting the wedding ceremony, exclaiming that Emma isn't who she really says she is. You know how there are those videos of how the entire story or mystery of this series or movie can be solved in the first 5 minutes? This is that moment right there. While the first story takes place surrounding Paul and Emma's wedding and its complications, the real main character of this two-parter is the time bastard himself, Ted Spankowski. Oh yeah, I know that surname.
Peter Spankowski.
I wonder if there's any relation there. In Forever and Always, it is revealed that Emma is actually a robot and that Paul is actually a clone created by a very important organization. The company that the guy who didn't like musicals characters work at, called Coven Communications Research and Power. Together, the two not humans work to cover up their not human nature by killing the real Emma and going after the strange homeless man who interrupted their wedding and brought all that information to light in the first place. Then, in Time Bastard, we see the same story, but from Ted's point of view. We had attended the wedding uninvited, and after failing thrice at wooing potential sad bangs, including the bride herself, Ted hits the bar to go and drown his sorrows, and as the good stuff starts flowing... Wait, it's Smirnoff. As the crap stuff starts flowing, Ted drifts off a bit and begins to see that it is no longer Paul and Emma's wedding, but his, and his first true love from high school, Jenny. The two have the first dance, and then Jenny gives Ted a wedding present. A box. But not just a box. The Bastards box, where we are introduced to another Lord in Black, Tonoi Caraxes, otherwise known as Tinky. Ted wakes screaming and is asked to leave by Paul to go do some work that Paul needed to do, and since nobody wanted Ted there anyways, As Ted waits for the printer to do its damn thing, he takes a seat, and after what feels like 85 years.
85 years.
85 years. He wakes up to find himself in the CCRP in the far-off future, where he sees the plans for Robot Emma and is confronted by a cyborg who seems to have a bone to pick with this Time Bastard. Ted is quite confused and ends up using a disintegration ray to fend off his attacker. Ted figures out that he has time travel powers and so decides he must use them responsibly, to make sure his younger self doesn't screw up his chances with Jenny again. He finds himself back in 2004 in the Hatchetfield Gazette, as CCRP hadn't been established yet. Ted tracks down his younger self and puts him to sleep so that he can head off to get with Jenny in the only way he learned to, by being a pushy asshole. Oh, and also by crippling his rival who would later become the cyborg that tries to kill Ted in the future. Time travel! Then, Ted finally makes it to where Jenny is posting a letter to Ted, but future Ted is now there to put on the moves, to which Jenny responds terribly, and tragically, a disintegration device is triggered from within Ted's pocket, and Jenny begins to fade away, slowly and painfully, to dust. So Ted rushes back to his office, where he tries to go back in time to stop himself from stopping himself. But then he awakes, it hadn't worked, as the experimental temporal device that allowed him to time travel wasn't invented yet. And as we come to this realization, we hear the voice of Tinky revealing the bastard box to Ted once again. This time, whatever was in the box did permanent damage to Ted's brain, and as he isn't supposed to exist in this time, and has no way to travel back to the future, we see him stumble out onto the street, donning an old beige coat and begging for some spare change for the homeless. So there he stayed for years and years, until one day he arrives outside a wedding ceremony, where he recognizes Robot Emma from the future. He bursts into the wedding and tries to expose the not Emma for who she truly is, being laughed at by the whole gathering, including Ted. So Ted, now only known as the homeless guy, sat on the street, tormented by Tinky once more, and confronted by not Emma and Paul 23, before being brutally stabbed so that the married couple's true identities would remain hidden. This two-parter is incredible in so many ways. The little hints seen in Forever and Always that allude to the going-ons of Time Bastard, such as the receptionist talking about boarding up Ted's office when he's fired, and when Ted travels into the future, he finds that his office had been boarded up. The continuity is on point, and I'd like to give a huge shout out to both Joey Richter and LaurenLopez for both giving performances of them playing off of themselves on a Zoom call. Absolute peak character acting. Wow, you know what? Nightmare Time is so worth it. With such rich character development, branching out from the established characters of the original musicals, and exploring new avenues that can be used for material in later shows also. Let's see how they keep this ball rolling. Hopefully they don't have weird storylines about a grieving father wanting to have sex with his car. Oh my god, they made a story about a grieving father want to have sex with his car. Okay, so that's not what may appear to be at first, but I gotta say, Dylan Saunders and Kendall Nicole elevate these stories to become something else more entirely. In Jane's a Car, we explore what life is like for Tom and Tim Houston as they try to move on from Jane's death, and it is the most wholesome damn thing to see them both interact with Becky after seeing them in Black Friday.
Guns in their hands. On the screen, a horde of zombies bite and claw.
Quick, shoot him!
Shoot him? What if I want to help him?
Come on, you're gonna die!
A smirk creeps into the corner of Tom's mouth.
However, to throw a spanner in the works is the restored Mustang that Tom had crashed, which is being fixed up by no other than Babysitter of the Year, Ethan, and is accompanied by Lex. Eventually, Tom gets the car back, only to find it's possessed by his dead wife, Jane. This tears Tom's whole trying to move on journey apart, as Jane explains that there was a recording of one of her patients talking about a book he was studying called the Black Book, and how through the power of the Lords in Black, a ritual of soul transference could be possible. Well, wouldn't you know, at the time of the car crash that recording was playing, and the soul transference worked, causing Jane to be bound to the car. Now all she wants is to creep on some hot girls and take their bodies, to which Tom tries desperately to object to. Eventually, Jane sets her sights on Becky Barnes and runs her over while playing the track, stealing her body and freeing her soul.
Becky! Funk, the Mustang plows into Becky. She tumbles over it, slamming on the hood, then the roof, then the dirt, as the car continues flying forward, directly into a tree. Crash! Bang! Darkness.
Tom gets arrested for attempted vehicular manslaughter, and the car is scrapped, leaving Jane possessing Becky's body to be the mother for Tim that she always wanted to go back to being. This story gives me mixed feelings because I love the Tom, Tim, and Becky interactions, and they get ruined by the wife returning Black Mirror style, which makes you wonder why Tom married Jane in the first place if this is how inconsiderate she is for others' lives, including Tom's. It's a weird one, alright, and that's not to mention the car-loving scene, which is the true horror of this episode.
Make me feel like a woman again, Tom. Kiss me.
Where?
Everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Make love to me, Tom. Make love to your car.
Knock, knock. There's a tapping at the car door. Tom quickly covers himself and rolls down the steam-covered window to find Tim.
Oh, hey, kiddo.
What are you doing in there, Dad?
The witch in the web wants power, power over you. From the heights of her lonely tower, she flies at the early dew. I can hold her just for so long, in the web I spin and loom. But a witch is a witch if you allow her to have power over you.
I love ukulele music. Next up, it's time to get complicated, as this story isn't as cut and dry as introducing a Lord in Black and their powers as it had been the previous part 2s. In The Witch in the Web, we begin to explore the Witchwood forests and Hannah's mind powers. We are also introduced to some new characters such as Hannah's mom, Pamela, Duke, and most importantly, Miss Holloway, who takes the role of a mentor for Hannah and her powers, first posing as a social worker and then begins to explore some freaky deaky shit.
Hannah, you have to go into nightmaretime.
No.
But don't worry. I'm going with you.
In the mind world, known as Nightmaretime, whoa, that's the name of the show, Hannah goes to explore the Witchwood forest to see that the trees are in fact people who had been planted there by the Hatchetmen to form a web to keep out dark magics. But it was beginning to weaken and allow through a witch of dark magic called, WilliamBlandinoMusic. It is within this dream world that the townsfolk mistake Hannah as the witch, only to be saved by Miss Holloway. But then emerges a familiar face.
We just keep running into each other, don't we, Hannah?
And a long-time rival of Miss Holloway's, good old Uncle Wiley. It seems that Uncle Wiley and Miss Holloway had faced off many times before, but Uncle Wiley mentions that he won half the time. There appears to be multiverses that he knows about where he wins, that Miss Holloway doesn't yet understand. But Hannah does. She sees every possibility of every universe, everything, everywhere, all at once style. But also not really. This story is heavy on the exposition and world building, and I still have a whole Nightmaretime 2 series to get through. So give it a watch if you really want to know all the ins and outs of the lore. So a fight ensues as Uncle Wiley possesses to knock out Duke and choke the sleeping Miss Holloway, but with the power of having a big brain, Hannah saves Miss Holloway, waking her up, leaving Hannah alone to confront the witch in the web, WilliamBlandinoMusic. It is in this scene we are presented with all 5 Lords in Black: Blinky, Tinky, Nibbly, Pokey, and Wiggly. Teletubbies. Turns out Hannah is the descendant of the witch, and as Hannah tries to resist the witch's possession, The power of ukuleles saved the day. It was relevant from the beginning, see? And with that power, a lady with long white hair known as Webby is summoned to get rid of the witch. It is revealed that the Lords in Black are Webby's brothers. So, that must be an interesting Thanksgiving. See? I made an American joke. I'm learning. Hannah awakens safely and all is well. As Miss Holloway sets off with Duke, the sun rises and all is well in Hatchetfield. A rare happy ending for a Hatchetfield story. And then, ending off the episode with an absolute banger once more.
You're supposed to love me the most. Got me in the spell you cast. The iris of your eye is black. Weren't you the one to watch my back? Unlike the wishes you summon.
Okay, so now it's time to justify my watch order as we head into Nightmare Time 2. Starting with honeyqueen introduces us to Nibbly, then Watcherworld introduces us to Blinky, and Time Bastard introduces Tinky. Wiggly and Pokey had been introduced in The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals and Black Friday. Having all 5 Lords in Black established, before we go and dive in to the Witchwood Forest and the mechanics of the Black Book and all that other juicy lore that can be found within. Heading in to Nightmare Time 2.
When the hatchet's in your back and the week has got you feeling down.
Here we go, Nightmare Time 2, and we are starting off with 2 stories that explore not only the lore of the Witchwood Forest, but the mystical mechanics of it also, with the main function of it being that the soil of the Witchwood Forest causes plants to grow quickly and strongly. Such plants includes Emma Perkins' weed, also known as the famous Perky's buds. The story which introduces us to a few new characters that we had heard reference to before. Ziggy, Deb's non-binary ex, and Grace Chastity, the definitive nerdy prude and church girl. Ziggy has taken a summer job on Emma's pot farm, helping to plant and defend the pot from the local nighthawks, while Grace Chastity and co. are protesting against them shooting the endangered birds. However, while the nighthawks have been eating that god-tier good kush, they have reached such a high that they have a higher form of consciousness. Not the way stoners say they do, but I mean literally. A nighthawk by the name of Ezekiel begins to talk to Emma and Ziggs telepathically, and as such, him and his flock come with only one request: that they keep growing weed for them as efficiently as possible, which means shitting in the woods, eating bird vomit, and sleeping outside for like 30 minutes tops. And if they refuse, well, they certainly try to.
No, dude, no, I'm not hungry.
Ziggs backs away, but the birds surround them as well. They latch onto Ziggs' body, forcing their mouth open.
No, I can't do this. You're so shitty for vegan.
The nighthawks proceed to fill Ziggy's mouth with buckets of piping hot vomit.
Oh, no!
Ziggs falls to the ground beside Emma. Ezekiel is pleased.
Now, go to bed. Rest. Tomorrow you will work harder.
Ziggs and Emma devise an escape plan using a scarecrow, but eventually are found out and the psychic powers of the Nighthawks seem to have evolved. After Emma escapes, unfortunately leaving Ziggs behind, and being denied help from Grace Chastity, that nerdy prude, she returns to see Ziggs being mind-controlled by the flock of birds. In a last-ditch effort to fight back, Emma sets the barn and field of weed alight, and the mind control is broken as all the birds get high from the smoke. But as they escape, Ezekiel the Nighthawk finds his psychic powers have grown even more, reaching the point of telekinesis, and knows how to use a gun as well.
Through the doorway, he spots the shape of a woman. Bang, bang, bang! He unloads. The figure's torn to pieces by a spray of ammo. She falls back. Ezekiel flaps over to find a painting of a well-endowed woman riding a flying joint.
But through perky titty trickery, Emma hits him with a shovel into a wood chipper that Ziggs had waiting outside the house. The two, finally safe from the Nighthawks, light up the biggest blunt that they have, Django Unchained style, and smoke the night away. Except the police arrive and arrest them for arson and the killing of an endangered species. But the Witchwood Forest lore doesn't stop there. In Abstinence Camp, we are introduced to a good old teen camp slasher, just like Friday the 13th, where we see what would be future characters of Nerdy Prudes Must Die, Peter Spankowski, Stephanie Lauder, and Grace Chastity, attending the aptly named Camp I Don't Wanna Bang. In a big ol' horny teen slasher parody, we find that not only does the soil of Witchwood Forest make plants grow fast and strong, but also people, when the antagonist of Abstinence Camp demonstrating this, Lumberax. Stood at 8 foot tall and having a distaste for fornicating in his woods, the Axeman slashes apart the campers by whacking off their heads and jerking their limbs off.
Blam! The metal wallet stamp comes pounding into Gabe's forehead. No forgiveness! Not in these woods! Lumberax grabs a mallet and hammers the stamp deeper into Gabe's skull. Wham! Wham! Blood sprays. The Mad Woodsman's justice is served.
In this story, I can see why people talk about how little Pete and Steph's relationship is developed in Nerdy Prudes Must Die, because in Abstinence Camp, it is built up so much more gradually. I found myself rooting not just for the underdog Pete, but for Steph to get with him for herself too, because they're shown to be good for each other, and they play off each other so well, even having an awkward shower scene where they almost get got by the Axeman for the first time. The other two last significant characters of this story are Boy Jerry and Girl Jerry. The hypocritical camp leaders that become a mommy and a daddy to the Axeman, who, to hide the fact they broke rule numero uno of Camp I Don't Wanna Bang.
I'll take canoes over condoms any day.
Yep, Jerry, you sure rocked that canoe and used no condom. Lumberax was born and raised in the Witchwood Forest, and as a result, just like Emma's pot farm, grew fast and strong and was 6 foot tall by the age of 2. Their Camp I Don't Wanna Bang parents taught the Axeman the ways of the Lord Jesus. Honor thy mother and father, and thou shalt not bang. Shame they didn't teach the whole thou shalt not kill part of the 10 Commandments, but hey, I'm gonna stop myself before I offend a religious belief. Anyways, with the power of Ted's old porno mag, Pete and Steph fight back against the Axeman, but there's not much you can do against an 8-foot man that can throw a literal tree at you. So, Grace Chastity comes to save the day to teach Lumberax about the birds and the bees. If Boy Jerry and Girl Jerry are his mother and father, then they broke the rule of thou shalt not bang.
They had sex.
Huh?
They fornicated. In your woods.
And thus was the end of Boy Jerry and Girl Jerry, and Lumberax, realizing his life's goal was given to him by 2 virginity-rockin' hypocrites, he hands the axe to Grace and lumbers off into the woods. What a happy...
Not so fast. The summer's not over yet.
Damn it, Hatchetfield! So Grace Chastity actually enjoys this masochistic hellhole of a camp, keeps everyone there for the rest of the summer with her as camp leader. Similar to the end of Nerdy Prudes Must Die, she becomes the monster that people fear. With her Lumberax in hand, she'll keep these horny teens in line. With previous exposition-heavy episodes and stories such as The Witch in the Web, where it's easy to lose track of the story amongst all the information you're absorbing, Perky's Buds and Abstinence Camp far improve upon this aspect by focusing on the established story first, and weaving the lore of the Witchwood Forest into the plot. However, with Perky's Buds, there is also a whole spiel about the Hatchetmen, which I kinda skipped over because, like I said, world building is pretty neat, but when it's just guys talking about how important trees are, with nothing else happening, it doesn't make for a very compelling watch or listen. That being said, these are two really good stories with some really good songs to go with them. Virginity Rocks absolutely rocks, and the Axeman is where we hear my favorite theme from the Hatchetfield series, the Hatchettown motif.
Oh my God! These woods belong to him, and we're all at his peril. If you see him, then you cross the line. Get lost inside those demon eyes.
Who will pray for me when I'm gone? Or is this the eternal dark without a dawn? Who will pray for you? Who will pray for when your body's gone? This is the consequence for what you've done. What did you say?
These two stories were really damn enjoyable. Hopefully they keep the ball rolling and don't have some weird man-child story. Who am I kidding? You know how this goes by this point. I hate this, I am so unbearably uncomfortable, but unfortunately that's the point of this story. Daddy? God, I'm gonna have to say that word a lot about this one, aren't I? Well, let's just rip the band-aid off. Daddy is a story that I thought was gonna revolve around my least favorite character, Sherman Young, but surprisingly, it follows the story of a more sympathetic Frank from Black Friday. This episode is the first where Starkid begins to make use of stock footage and more pre-recorded material to create a more short film rather than stage performance vibe to it. Oh, and did I mention they start the episode with his dog dying? If someone kicking a dog is a way to make people instantly hate a character, having a character's dog die is a great way to make people instantly feel for that character. Whereas the Frank from Black Friday was obsessed with money that he made from the toys, this Frank is revealed to have always had a passion for collecting toys, and opening his own toy store was his dream, but Amazon is putting him out of business. Enter Sherman Young and his rich MILF mother Sheila, who inexplicably wants to marry Frank, which, because rich and alone plus broken alone equals happy marriage. Trust me. They get married like that. And the next day, Sherman now has a new daddy at the age of 41. We are also introduced to the butler, Marco, who is clearly inspired by everyone's favorite tall zombie Lurch from the Addams Family. And no points for guessing, but nothing is as it seems here, as when Sheila and Frank get into the fight about how Sheila keeps treating Sherman like a baby and locks Frank outside of the house in the cold, Frank threatens to leave and take half of everything. Sheila opens a trapdoor where Frank falls down into a dungeon. There, Frank stays, accompanied by nobody but rats and a man in a hurry, one of Sheila's many previous husbands. But now that Frank is trapped in a dungeon, Toy Zone can't open, and Sherman is devastated, so goes and indirectly frees Frank from the dungeon. After a thrilling fight scene between Frank and the Olympic javelin thrower Marco, man, these fight scenes on Zoom calls are always really well done. Then Sheila holds Frank at gunpoint and takes him to a restraining chair where it is revealed that Sheila isn't just a MILF because she moisturizes, but because she uses the power of the Black Book, or at least a few pages that she copied from it. She reveals that she had absorbed the years of life from her previous husbands in order to remain young, a power which Sherman memorized and then scribbled all over before using it to take his mother's life energy. Now, Sherman stands in the body of a 7-year-old boy and shall force Frank to be his daddy forever and ever, and yeah, everything to do with Sherman Young just gives me the heebie-jeebies. Oh, that's why their surname is Young, because the power keeps them young, and impeccable writing, good sirs. Anyways, moving on. Killer Track is a pretty dense story, all things considered. as it revolves around Nightmaretime original characters, one of which being Miss Holloway, so time to focus up because it's lore time. Killer Track opens with a killer band performing at a venue called the Slaughtered Pig, which is super metal. After their performance, the band are approached by a lanky, shady dude named Kale saying he's got a killer track to listen to. The only one to agree is their guitarist Rosary. So the way the killer track works is that you watch it and then you receive a phone call that says 7 days, and then a week later a girl crawls out of your TV to kill you. Wait, hang on. No wait, you just listen to it and then 7 days you hear it from any sound source, blaring loud, to the point you want to destroy everything and then yourself. So now Rose has been cursed by this killer track. Who you gonna call? Doug Keane! A social worker who brings Rose to Miss Retro's diner run by Miss Holloway. Rose is skeptical at first, but when shown the power that Miss Holloway holds, she sits her ass down and eats that humble pie. Miss Holloway reveals the Black Book and the power that she shall be using, where we get to see a fully written version of the Black Book for you to pause and go through frame by frame, picture by picture, to pick out all the little tidbits of info to confirm your theories about the black and white, and how Webby is actually Miss Holloway's second cousin twice removed or something or other. But the Lords in Black that Miss Holloway calls upon using the Black Book is Tanoi Caraxis, aka Tinky, aka the one from Time Bastard. Using the time powers, Miss Holloway possesses Rose's body during the time she had heard the song, so that technically, she never heard it. Ignore the paradoxes. They happen all the time. So now, it's Miss Holloway that has the song hunting her. And hunt her it does.
She can see it, touch it. The noise stops. A moment of clarity.
I understand.
Then, Miss Holloway's eyes go blank. She falls to the floor.
Now Duke is left with Miss Holloway dead, and after dropping Rose home, he lays down on his couch and grieves the loss of the woman he loved. That everybody loved. I feel Kurt Mega is one of the more underrated actors of Team Starkid, and oh boy do I want to tackle Spies Are Forever at some point too, but this guy just gives solid character and vocal performances across the board for these shows. Anyways, Duke suddenly remembers something that Miss Holloway left in his pocket. A letter. If she dies, you just to wait 2 hours and not let her be taken by an ambulance. Or to a morgue. Well, shit. After rushing to the hospital, Duke sneaks into the morgue to find Miss Holloway back alive, and we begin to learn about the extent of Miss Holloway's magic power as she creates a dead duplicate of herself. But as is known about using magic from the Black Book, a price must be paid. And when Duke asks for an explanation back at the diner, while I braced myself for another snooze fest of an exposition dump, 4 hours pass immediately.
In mind, and now I want answers. I think I'm owed that.
Absolutely.
I want to know who you are. Really. I want to know where you got this black book. I want to know how you can do the things that you do.
Okay. It's a long story.
I'm all ears.
Where do I begin? I guess it all started when I first came to Hatchetfield back in... And that's the whole story.
Duke doesn't remember a thing. The price of Miss Holloway's power is that people would never know her past. So people would never know her. This was the deal. This is such an interesting character struggle to give to the more complex characters in the cast, and avoids any heavy expedition dumps being given out to the audience around like where Miss Holloway came from. She's a freaky magic lady shrouded in mystery, and there's nothing you can do about it. As we will later see, it also stops her from forming meaningful relationships with people. But Duke sure as shit is still gonna try and get in there, if you know what I mean. After dying to the song, Miss Holloway understands that the song is a living being, seeking to be heard by as many people as possible. Where is there a large group of people going to be gathered? There's only one place that they can think of. At the Honey Festival, Rose spots Kale heading for the sound system, where it's revealed that he is a carrier for the song, similar to how Linda Monroe was going to be used as a mother for Wiggly. So that's something interesting to consider when looking back at how all these Lords in Black function in the world of Hatchetfield. Rose fails to stop Kale, from playing the killer track to the whole of the Honey Festival, which leaves Miss Holloway to perform a last-ditch effort to save them. She plays hard and loud with the band Needy Beast from the beginning of the story and sings about herself, so that once the song finishes, nobody is able to remember what they just heard. Therefore, the curse does not work. Let's be honest, that is one hell of a creative solution to this sort of an antagonist. Big ups to the writer for weaving them plot points together. I heavily enjoyed this moment of outsmarting music itself. Duke takes down Kale and smashes apart his phone, causing Kale to smash apart also, the hollow shell of a man crumbling away after what he had become. All in the Honey Festival are saved. Duke and Miss Holloway meet back up on a paddle boat, Duke feeling very proud of himself that it was he alone who saved the day. Of course, nobody remembering what Miss Holloway did, and tragically, Miss Holloway explains that since the town knows that Miss Holloway is dead, it's on to the next persona. But moving on means leaving things behind. And that something is a someone. And that someone is Duke. He refuses to leave her, but he has no choice. He shuts his eyes, and Miss Holloway says goodbye.
No, that's not fair. You can't make me forget you. I couldn't forget you. Even if I tried, God, you know how I feel about you.
Duke, relax. I'm trying to say goodbye. Can I?
Miss Holloway leans closer. He closes his eyes. She kisses him. He opens his eyes, and she's gone. Suddenly, he can't remember why he's out here, on a paddle boat in the lake. Then a tiny boom in the sky. Oh yeah, he was watching the fireworks.
We end the story as Duke exits a school after a child had gotten into an accident in woodworking class, only to run into a woman aiming to become a new teacher. Guidance counselor in the school. Miss Holiday, who seems to have a strangely familiar interest in the 80s. I'm sure that's not important.
The entrance.
Well, you can't dwell on the past.
Really? Is that a tape deck in there, Miss Retro?
What can I say? I love the 80s. Bye, Duke.
She winks and heads inside.
You know how I've been praising the way that Starkid has been performing some pretty impressive fight scenes in this Zoom format throughout the Nightmaretime series? Well, now it's time for the motherfucking tournament arc!
Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Started like a honeymoon, but now I see you never ever had my best interests.
That's right, Starkid went full shonen anime on this bitch and decided, screw your damn expectations. Let's have kids with superpowers duke it out for the entertainment of the rich. Well, that's what Yellow Jacket does. Screw your gradual peeks into the paranormal and occult, we're mixing My Hero Academia with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and there is nothing you can do about it. They straight up have Avdol versus Dio, with Magician's Red versus Zawarudo! After a punk-ass music video from Lex, Yellow Jacket begins with Hannah, now played by LaurenLopez instead of Nicole Kendall, which at first threw me off, but this is supposed to be a kinda older version of Hannah, so I rolled with it. She's in woodwork class, getting bullied of course, because different equals being bullied, While working on her project on the bandsaw, Hannah begins to see visions of a pale boy with thick blue veins on his face beating the shit out of a boy known only as Bloody Nose Boy. So, we're gonna call him Bob. The vision ends with Bob screaming, getting assimilated into the pale boy's hive mind before Hannah snaps back to reality. Oh, there goes her fingy. And then we get introduced to the true antagonist of the entire Hatchetfield series. The American healthcare system. Lex finds that her non-existent Toy Zone health insurance isn't gonna help her pay the huge medical bills, so needs to look into new forms of income, that being getting a high school diploma to qualify for a better job. So in order to get that, she readies herself for an equivalency test. Meanwhile, Hannah gets into an argument with Webby about if Webby can't help them with something as trivial as money, why is she even there at all? So Lex sets off for her test, forgetting that it's Hannah's birthday, but not to worry because Babysitter of the Year Ethan is here to save the day. Taking her to Pizza Pete's, Hannah uses her psychic powers to win jackpot after jackpot in the arcade, catching the attention of one Eddie Chiplucky, the owner of Pizza Pete's. And wowee, I love this costume design, especially the way they've got a gold tooth going on. Love this man. Chiplucky explains that there are many kids who come into the arcade and exhibit certain gifts while playing the arcade games. He takes Ethan and Hannah to Rollerama, where we see that it's tournament time!
Spitfire immediately springs into action, diving at Stopwatch, flipping forward. The back of her sneaker comes crashing down on the mat. Stopwatch dodges, running for the edge of the ring. Spitfire's gaze follows him. She takes a deep breath, focuses her energy, and closes her eyes. Her arm thrusts forward. A red glow ignites in her chest, shoots down her arm, and leaps from her hand in the form of an enormous fireball. The flames blaze across the platform, heading straight for Stopwatch. Right before he's hit, he sucks in a chest full of air, jams his eyes shut, and braces himself. The fireball roars past, exploding against the glass barrier between the fighters and the cheering crowd. Ethan winces, but to his utter shock, Stopwatch hasn't been burnt to a crisp. In fact, he's nowhere near the fireball's path. Somehow, miraculously, the kid has switched from one side of the ring to the other. In the blink of an eye, Stopwatch has traveled 10 yards, narrowly escaping Spitfire's attack. Ethan is mystified.
Okay, now just watching this fight, I'd really like to take a moment to mention that the costume design quality in Nightmaretime 2 has skyrocketed immensely, and can especially be seen in this episode. You can really see the building blocks that would lead to the costume designs for the Lords in Black in the summoning of Nerdy Prudes Must Die. Especially with, once again, Chiplucky's hat and gold tooth and all that, the fighters where they have these sort of pseudo-superhero costumes on, and then of course Otho's design, which the mask and bodysuit and everything is just so damn good. But we're not quite at Otho yet, so let's keep going. After being offered a tempting deal by Chiplucky to have Hannah fight in the tournaments, Babysitter of the Year Ethan refuses in fear of what Lex would do to him if he allowed it. So the two return home to find Lex holding a half-inflated balloon and a slice of birthday cake, and we have such a heartbreaking scene from Lex. If this scene was between Nicole and Angela as Lex and Hannah, I think I might have actually cried myself to sleep right then and there, but unfortunately this Hannah isn't the sweet little kid that she used to be. With Lex leaving after that heart punch, Ethan comes to the conclusion that maybe fighting in the tournament for money wouldn't be so bad. So Hannah finally gets roped into fighting in the tournaments as Yellow Jacket. Hey, that's the name of the episode. But first, has to drink some weird blue shit?
God, I don't know, some kind of blue shit?
Exactly, Emma! What the fuck is this shit?
And with that, Hannah's psychic potential awakens and she turns off Spitfire's power, but also hears the mind of a mysterious figure in a private viewing box.
Hello, Hannah.
Anyways, Hannah wins the fight and Ethan gets handed a check for 100 grand. So what does he do? Time to buy a penthouse, arcade, bounce house, and pizza. He also grabs himself a cheeky little engagement ring further down the line, but let's not get too hasty. Lex at work is sent a letter to the address of the new house and is flabbergasted by what she finds. They can finally live a happy, normal life free from financial ruin. Man, it really says something about life when fictional characters being relieved from debt and financial hardship gives this amount of catharsis. Ethan and Lex share a touching moment under the stars, and Ethan explains that the money comes from stocks, which I am so thankful for, because if he had said crypto, we all would have called bullshit on that. Meanwhile, in the uber scary secret lair of capitalism and questionable morals, the pale boy, named Otho, is approached by his boss, Charles. You can call him Chuck, or Chase, or Charlie, or... I'm sure it's not important. It's revealed that the only thing holding the pale boy back from running rampant is a bomb that Charles had put in his head, and always has his finger on the button of the detonator. So what? I guess he's like some kind of suicide squad? The day comes where the champ must face a new competitor. Otho enters the ring accompanied by a now masked Bob, the bloody-nose boy, to fight Spitfire. She does her best, but Otho and Bob fight in unison to take her down, and she too becomes assimilated. Ethan says, "Fuck this shit, I'm out," but is approached by Charles to get him to let Hannah fight Otho. Ethan refuses, but then something takes over his mind and forces him to counteroffer for $100 million. So the fight shall happen, thanks to Hannah and her new mastery of her psychic abilities. It's at this point we see Hannah reach the peak of her rebellious era. She had just taken over Ethan's mind, and as Webby appears to stop her from going into the fight, Hannah forces Webby out, as we now see a very powerful child begin to make a very stupid decision. She enters the ring to face off against Otho. Now with Bob and Spitfire by his side and using them as a meat shield, Otho fights dirty to get the upper hand and begins assimilating Hannah into the hive mind. With her powers, Otho could control the whole world in an instant. So all Hannah can do is think of the one she was doing this all for. Lex. Lex at Toy Zone gets jump scared by sing-along Pokey dolls and falls into the black and white where she reunites with Webby. Lex too has a gift. She had just grown out of it, as people have described throughout the story. But now she remembers and reaches through the black and white to get to Hannah. And so, Deus Lex Machina comes to save the day by reaching out for the detonator that blows up Otho's head and saves Hannah, as well as saving Spitfire and my main man, Bob! However, Charles isn't just going to let his $1 trillion investment go to waste, and orders armed security to seize Hannah and Lex. Scratch that. Reverse it. As babysitter of the year, Ethan holds Charles at gunpoint and orders them to be let go.
Open the doors for him.
Bruno obliges. As Ethan, Lex, and Hannah make their escape, Charles calls after them.
Well played, kids. I'll see you around.
As the three make it home, Ethan apologizes profusely, only to be met with Lex doing nothing, which scares him more than her going to kill him. The following morning, Ethan finds the apartment empty. No Lex, no Hannah, alone, with an engagement ring and a leaky faucet. Once on the road in a beat-up old van, Lex and Hannah head out of Hatchetfield, the first of any to do so alive in the Hatchetfield series. Things were going to be different for them from now on, since they both have access to the gift. But hey, at least they're together. But they left Ethan, my poor boy! And thus ends this monumental review of an incredible series. Who knew a spin-off of series of a couple musicals to be this damn heart-wrenching and enjoyable? And on top of that, they mastered the art of telling several stories that interweave at different moments, which adds heavily to the rewatchability. Such examples as Ted being brought home by Sheila and Daddy, and we see the beginnings of that in Killer Track. And later in Killer Track, Duke is talking about getting the school to pay for medical bills, and Yellow Jacket, we find that those medical bills were Hannah's, and that's only just scratching the surface. While there are a couple of duds that are brought down by a few nitpicks that unfortunately carry a lot more weight than they should, such as the whole Jane is a car trying to possess another woman thing, ruining what was a really wholesome episode about Tom recovering from grief and Tim feeling like he's part of a family again. However, I wouldn't say that you should skip any of these episodes. That being said, I feel like I should justify my watch order because Nightmare Time watch order is as subjective as the Star Wars watch order. I started with Honeyqueen because high quality, they know what they're doing, and it's an easily digestible one-story episode that introduces a Lord in Black, the Lord in Black that is featured in the beginning of every Nightmare Time intro, wouldn't you know? Watching that one first means that when you go back to Nightmare Time 1 and watch through, all Lords in Black are established before you start diving into the Witchwood Forest lore and the mechanics of the Black Book. Then, when you're back to Nightmare Time 2, all the Honey Festival references feel strangely nostalgic by that point. Yeah, that's how long the series took me to get through. I didn't binge it. I made sure to sit down and enjoy all aspects of these recordings. Speaking of which, Starkid really invented the wheel with this one. What started as an idea that came from unrehearsed script read-throughs such as The Addams Family and Scream, they created and pioneered a new medium for them to perform throughout a pandemic where people were kept apart from each other. And even then, the way that these stories are written, they almost wouldn't work on stage as well as they did in the Zoom calls. From actors performing against themselves, to then later pre-recording one actor playing 2 or even 3 people at the same time. The incorporation of music videos as the musical numbers and later using stock footage to better set scenes as well as the ambient sound effects, and let me mention, once again, Matt DeHaan just improvising with the music he was given by Jeff Blim just made the scenes absolutely incredible. This series is a must-watch for people who are on that Starkid fever, and the series is really underrated compared to Starkid's on-stage musicals, and I believe that's because they take a look at episode 1 and see that it isn't quite for them, as you have to squint at the performers to see what they're up to, and first impressions are the longest lasting, and it's quite sad to see. So it's time for me to echo the comments I got in my previous Starkid review. Get your ass out there and watch Nightmare Time. At least give Time Bastard a watch, because I still am in love with the Time Bastard song. It's just a hidden gem that needs more loving, so please, if you haven't, then go. Go now, because I'm going to. Take care. Good luck. Man, I'm tired. One more thing before we go. The music provided with the backing tracks by William Blandino and Dirty Boy Soup. Links will be in the description. Also, become a member. We're going to have editing live streams for either myself or Brandon. Brandon's the better looking one and he edits more, so there's a win-win situation there. Okay, subscribe. Goodbye.